Okay. It is common to respond to a person who is exhorting us to change our behavior by drawing attention to that person's own behavior. This response, however, is irrational. Whether or not somebody in fact heeds his or her own advice is irrelevant to whether that person's advice should be heeded.
All right, so what is our conclusion here?
Uh, I am thinking that it's that last sentence. I'm not entirely sure.
So our conclusion is going to be this response is irrational. And why do
Oh, really? Okay.
that's what this author's opinion is, right? Like that's what they're trying
Yeah.
to convince us of. And why do we think it's irrational?
Okay. I think that's why I got caught up on some of these was determining the main conclusion.
So we're like, this response is irrational because whether or not someone listens to their own advice doesn't mean that you shouldn't listen to the advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these are the ones that we kind of want to have like a basic prediction of like the structure of what we're doing here. So we're saying like, hey, it's common to do this, but to not do it is wrong because just because it like is trying to even think of a better way to describe this. So it's common to respond to a person who is exhorting us to change our behavior by drawing attention to that person's behavior. So it's common to do this thing, but it's dumb to do that thing because whether or not someone else does it doesn't make it right or not. It's kind of our
Yeah.
structure.
Okay.
So we want to find something that, so when it comes to argument structure, it doesn't matter necessarily the order that our sentences go in, but we have to have like the same number of like premises like in conclusion, but it can be in a different order, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So if
Yeah.
this one, I'm kind of like, all right, we kind of have like a premise slash background information. And then this last
Mm-hmm.
sentence is like definitely a premise. All right, so
Okay.
go ahead and start with A.
Okay. So A, other countries argue that if we are serious about disarming, that we should go ahead and disarm to show our good intentions, but this is irrational for we could make the same argument about them. So this one, it has the same amount of premises, and it's got the same, it's drawing the same conclusion that the first thing is irrational.
But does it follow the same structure? Like, do we use the same method to get to that conclusion as we do in the original?
It doesn't feel right to me,
Right.
but I got this one wrong, so my gut may not be.
So our conclusion here is this is irrational because we could say the same thing about them.
Yeah,
Our conclusion, we say this is
that it.
irrational because whether or not this is true doesn't matter. So for this one, for this to say this is irrational, go ahead and disarm to show them our good intentions. Honestly, I feel like these are switched too. I feel like for A to be right, it would have to be saying something like, it's common to think about what other countries do when they tell us to do something, but this is irrational because whether or not other countries are serious about disarming or not doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. So that doesn't feel right to me,
Right.
uh, just based on the second premise.
All right. So let's go ahead and check out B.
Yeah. Okay. So B, my neighbor urges me to exercise, but I see no good reason to do so. Despite his strenuous exercise, he has failed to exhibit any real benefits from it. It just doesn't follow the same format.
What is our conclusion here?
That they don't see a good reason to do so.
Yep. So we're saying my neighbor urges me to exercise, but I don't do so. Um, and this has a concession in it where ours doesn't have a concession either.
Yeah.
And we're saying like, and this is saying despite his strenuous exercise, he doesn't show any benefits. Where in ours, we're not like ours doesn't say like despite this person having good behavior, I don't see any benefits for that behavior.
Mhm.
At least in B, like the person's actually doing the exercise that he's suggesting.
Yeah.
All right, so what about C?
Country accuses another country of violating human rights standards. The accused country can reduce damage to its reputation by drawing attention to the human rights records of its accuser. This doesn't work either because the main conclusion isn't, it's not there in
Yeah, I
C.
don't even see a conclusion here.
Yeah, this feels like it's half baked.
This is an easy one to cross off.
Yeah. D, one should not dismiss the philosopher's argument that matter does not exist simply by pointing out that the philosopher acts as though matter exists. People's actions have no effect on the strength of their arguments. The second premise is similar to ours, but again, I don't see an appropriate conclusion that matches our format.
Um, so we're saying one should not dismiss the philosopher's argument,
Okay.
and
Oh, okay.
and then we would be saying, and what is the thing that we should not dismiss? It would be that matter does not exist by pointing out that matter does not exist by pointing out that the philosophers act as though matter exists, and then we're saying people's actions have no effect on the strength of their argument. I
Okay.
actually like this one. I feel like it's following a very similar format of, hey, you don't get to just dismiss this because of the philosopher saying so, because people's actions have like no effect on if their argument's good or not.
Okay, so this is kind of what you meant by saying that the order doesn't really matter as long as the information's there.
Right. And they're using the same, like, yeah. So they're saying like one should not dismiss that we should not dismiss the philosopher's argument by pointing out that the philosophers act as if his argument doesn't exist. That
Yeah.
follows this response is irrational, um, based on whether a person, like by drawing attention to that person's own behavior. And then D says people's actions have no effect on the strength of their argument. That's similar to whether or not someone in fact heeds his own advice is irrelevant to whether the advice should be followed or listened to.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, and then let's go ahead and try E.
We should not be too severe in our condemnation of the salesperson. We've all lied at some point or another. It is irrational to condemn a person for wrongs committed by everybody. It doesn't share at least one of the premises, and while it does say that it's irrational, it isn't. That's
It doesn't follow the same structure.
yeah,
It's saying it is irrational to condemn a person for wrongs committed by everybody. And we just
yeah,
show that everybody has these things. Uh,
yeah,
we don't like, we should not be too severe in our condemnation. We all have, like, this is saying like, we should not be too severe on, well, actually, that's not even our conclusion, what I just highlighted. Our conclusion here is we should not be too severe of the salesperson. And how do we justify that? By showing, like, we use like a principle, like, hey, we all have lied and it's crazy to do something that would hurt everybody. So then this specific person shouldn't have anything too serious happen to him.
yeah. Okay, so I mean, with that being said, I mean, obviously D is the correct choice here, given that it's the only one that has all three components of our original
Excellent.
argument.